Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Sejal Thakkar. Thank you for joining this exclusive Nobody Studios live stream. And so today we're talking about a really, really awesome topic because I think all of us know that when we're making important decisions, we want to use data, we want to use metrics, we want to rely on, important things like that when you're making these decisions. But we also know that not everything that is of value can be neatly squared away in some spreadsheet, right? And so there's these intangible aspects of business that can make or break a startup. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And there's no one better to talk about this topic than our chief nobody, Mark McNally. Welcome back, Mark.
Hi, Sejal.
Great to see you.
Good to see you.
I like that color. That's a cool color on you. I always see you wearing black on the show.
I know. Thanks. I get accused of wearing blacks and grays and blues, so I ripped this out today.
Perfect. Awesome. So I love this topic. When you suggested that we talk about this, I was really excited about it because I think that's important to talk about these intangible aspects, right? So what are some of these what are some of the ones that are on top of your mind for this topic?
Well, I mean, I guess, first of all, it's just, it's like you set it up. It's a bunch of things that are not measurable. You can't take a blood test and say, oh, it's positive or negative. It's just actually something you kind of feel. And that feels, for investors and financial types who are, taught and trained to think of, analysis and things that are more data driven. It's hard. So I think the market is caught up in a lot of data driven kind of aspects. I think there's more and more tools coming online to help you assess health of a company or a team or progress and things like that. One of our companies, Valify, is adding another data point to that in terms of assessing IP risk, which before was, nearly impossible and rarely done. So I think that the data side of analysis of company success is covered and growing, right? But every company I've been a part of that's excelled, and really done special things, there's just a different feeling. And this is I want to get in a circle and light a fire and hold hands, but there's a feeling about something that's special, and it translates into everything you do. It translates into a sense of urgency. It translates into passion. It translates into oh, that's a great idea. What is it going to take to get it done? And everybody's rallying to get it done. And it melts away a lot of, toxicity in the organization. It melts away stagnation or friction or politics. There's no room for politics in a space that everybody is excited about accomplishing the same thing, and everybody trusts the people around them, and everybody's trying hard, and they know it's likely to fail and it's never been done before, but that just kind of galvanizes something better, right? It's I've looked at companies now that I know as a part of that some brute forced them away to some kind of success because of a certain founder, or there's some metrics that were good enough that there was going to be a positive outcome. But man, those companies could have gone to the moon. They could have changed the world if the chemistry was right. Mm-hmm. And I just think chemistry is something you feel. And so as I've looked at different companies over the course of my career, whether it was to be investing in them or get involved in them as a mentor or advisor or anything, after I got past the founder and I said, okay, I believe in this idea or I believe in the opportunity, the thing I'm always looking for next is a chance to sense the chemistry in the team. And so I think a lot of people stay at the founder level in terms of assessing companies. That's certainly a part of it, but you don't really know how that person leads until you talk and meet the team. And so I think it's really important to see that chemistry, and so, one of the premises I put here is, you can look on the surface. You could say, look at this team. The careers are all amazing. Their titles in the past, great companies, are all impressive. Maybe the business model sounds sound. The product has been validated to be good. The market opportunity looks great. Check, 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 check. So you're going down your spreadsheet and there's nothing that should make it fail. But there's just something that won't make it work. And so I think when you look at these, there are a lot of companies that have those kinds of things, good market, good product, good teams, and they raise plenty of money. What's wrong? I do think leadership plays a big role, not just at the very top, but, from the top, it goes down in terms of the types of, leaders that your leaders recruit. But, that translates a little bit into culture, but there's a chemistry of the people. There's a chemistry of the idea that I just think is super important in the most exciting companies. It's just electric. And I go into companies and I try to feel it or sense it. And the best analogy I can give you is we all know that restaurant in our mind. It's like beautiful inside and out. The menu's great. Maybe the food's even great, but every time you go there, it's dead. And I don't know many people who, frequent dead restaurants. You're looking for a vibe. You're looking for some kind of energy. And it's those intangibles. There's something that's intangible about it, and hard to put your finger on why some work and some don't. But when they work and they click, it becomes self-perpetuating. A busy restaurant tends to stay busy. An empty restaurant tends to stay empty. And I just think you're looking for those intangibles. And, I think it's important as we go more and more data-driven to challenge the idea that everything is just a formulaic kind of decision, because it was that easy. We just automate company creation and sit back and, change the world and make great returns. It's not going to be that way.
Yeah, no. And you're using the word chemistry, right? Like that's a word that you really don't hear a lot about, right? So the way that I'm understanding how you're defining that word chemistry is that it's about the relationships and the interactions between the people in our studio, and that we're all working towards that common goal. Is that how you're defining it?
Yeah, but I would say if you just think of chemistry amongst people, then you could be a good church group, right? You could be a good, something else. I think that chemistry within a company is that there is a passion to bring something to life. There's a passion to see it come to life. Now, sometimes that is led by a person with a strong vision, and the folks that follow buy into that vision. But then everybody is pulling for that. They believe it. They can taste it. They can see it. They know their part and bring it to life. So I think there's something around not just chemistry of people, but alignment around a why, alignment around a goal. And there's something about chasing a goal that if you're not wired that way, if that's not what gets you out of bed, startups are probably not your thing. And I do see a lot of people who are masquerading as startup people. They mean well. They have the right skills. They probably say the right things, but they really don't have startup in their heart, and startup is going to be challenging. You're doing something that's impossible. It's never been proven before. Otherwise it wouldn't be worth doing, but you're chasing that glory. It's almost like an inventor, imagine inventing the light bulb. I mean, that was impossible before it wasn't, or chasing, breaking some kind of record in some record book, like, it's a personal challenge. I think there's an operating system that needs to be run through the organization. And so the chemistry is that even though people might have different levels of that personality, they still have something in them that wants to believe they could do something bigger themselves.
Yeah. And at the studio, we've heard people say, like, they've talked about somebody that they're bringing into the studio or they're introducing us to, and they'll say things like, and I do this with you all the time, right? When I'm mentioning someone to you, I go, yeah, that person's a nobody, right? It's like, if you were to ask me, what do I mean by that? It's hard to explain. It's just that I know, and so
you can just feel it when you talk to someone.
You just feel it, and it's in it. But so it is all about that, right? So the question that we're all wondering is, how do we figure this out? Like, so how you might define that chemistry might be different, right? How I might define it might be different, but you were starting to go there already, like making sure there's that alignment, right? Yeah. But give us some advice. So for the founders that are listening, they're trying to figure out, how do we get the chemistry right in our startup so we can set ourselves up for success? Give us some things that we'd look out for.
Well, first of all, I think you have to listen to your hunch and your gut. So I do think and by we, I mean me, I'm guilty as anybody. I'm changing that rapidly right now. But I think we tend to talk ourselves into decisions. So again, we look on the surface, right person, right, look the part, talk the part, right background, good referrals. Even if you're like, I'm not feeling it, we tend to talk ourselves into, but they're perfect, right? And I think we do that a lot in careers. I think we do it a lot in relationships. Recently a good friend of mine was this kind of inspired, I've been thinking a lot about chemistry in the companies. And then my buddy reached out to me and was telling me about someone he's been dating 6 months that he decided to break up with. And I was like, what? I mean, on the perfect, she's great. You guys look good together. You like similar things. I'm like, what are the red flags? He's like, honestly, there's no red flags. I'm like, dude, you're crazy. And he's like, I just didn't feel it. And at that, I just had to stop. And I was like, yeah, I mean, personal relationships is a feel it kind of thing, right? And I think it's increasingly more important than ever, because we're no longer like hierarchical management kind of styles and systems. Like, we are very personal in our communication styles and our leadership styles. You're very plugged into people's personal lives. We're living in virtual worlds. People are doing the calls in their pajamas or while they're feeding their kids or, walking their dogs. And so our lives, our boundaries are blending. And so I do think it's more important than ever that you have these fits, both personality fit and alignment, but then that special thing, like, am I going to enjoy working with this person? Is it going to feel fluid? Is it going to be easy? And that's a transition to a word that is just as murky as chemistry, which is flow. And I mentioned this, I think, on the previous podcast or two, which is like, I've met an investor who said, I have so many opportunities. I have a lot of capital, but I have so many great opportunities coming to me that I have come to learn just to follow the flow. So if one company I'm excited about seems hard to schedule with, or they get rescheduled a few times, or I get an email saying, sorry, so-and-so is sick, do you mind doing it Tuesday? Nothing wrong with all those facts. But if the other one is like, how's Tuesday next 8? And they're like, great, well, I'll be there. In fact, we're going to be in town. Can we bring you coffee? Like, if it just flows, he starts to listen to those signals, right? And I believe that in my personal life, and I'm trying to do it more in the professional life as well. So again, it's just another murky word for chemistry. But when you're looking for things that don't seem to be coming together easy, or seem to be stop and go, or 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, sometimes you need to listen to it. Now, it's an overall vision of a company. It can be confusing, because I do believe as a startup person, you have to be willing to like power through all kinds of adversity and not take no for an answer. So I'm not saying to give up early, but I do think in terms of relationships and making sure the team is right and aligned right, I do think you don't want to, what we're doing in startup creation is difficult enough. You don't want to be wasting a whole lot of energy on just trying to navigate, interpersonal relationships. That part should come easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many things that go into chemistry, right? The team chemistry. Like, if you get that right, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? But there's definitely, in order to, like, for example, what we're trying to do, build 100 companies in 5 years, we're looking for a specific kind of team chemistry, right? That may not be the same team chemistry another studio who might be doing something that's more like research and development, their team chemistry might be a little bit different. And someone that's, but for our studio, we know we need a certain type of chemistry. And so that's what we're always trying to figure out, right? How do we get that right chemistry so that we can get these teams to be high performing? So that's just that goes right to the question, right, Mark, of how do we cultivate that sense of purpose and direction, right, in our team, so we all start rowing the same way when some of these things can't even be measured, right?
Yeah. Well, for one, I think, again, I for one, but I think in general, we probably we're taught to tolerate the lack of chemistry or dysfunction too long. And I am definitely gravitating more towards once you realize something's wrong, make a choice, make a change quick, because it's not just that wasted resource, right, of that individual. You're also wasting their own time and their career to go find a better fit. But we are so intertwined, especially in what we do, that somebody who's not a perfect performer has an impact on everybody else around them. It either demotivates them, or it sends the wrong signal that standard is okay in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, or this just simply slows down the process, right? Now, I think it'd be easy to misconstrue that by chemistry, I mean there's no conflict. That's not what I mean at all, right? Mm-hmm. And I could immediately in my mind think of 10 people in my career and my personal life, and I can think of the ones that have no problem arguing with me, and afterwards I'll give them a hug and we keep moving on. I'll never think about it again. And I can think of the folks that will push back, and it just sticks with you in a yucky way for a while, you know?
Yes.
And I just think that comes down to communication styles. That comes down to, people's personal values of what they think is, personal boundaries on language or wording or how you phrase things, and maybe a self-awareness of how you might come across, but also a concern or care for others' feelings and how they might interpret things. Like, it takes energy and effort to put chocolate around some of your messages, but it's worth it, and other people aren't good at that. Other people, it comes naturally. So again, I think the culture, like you said, is important, that you do foster a world where you're not trying to just say no conflict, no conflict. That's the last thing I'm saying.
Right.
But you're saying we should be able to have good, healthy debates, make good choices, and, smile and go to lunch afterwards, and not have any, hard feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always feel like I simplify things a lot, too much sometimes. But like when you're making decisions, right? I just think, just consider the human element. It's like when you're making decisions that are just strictly on the numbers, like where we started talking about, that can sometimes overlook the impact on people, right? And so I think we do a great job of this at the studio. We have weekly team meetings where we literally go around and give everybody an opportunity to share whatever they're working on, what they're doing, what challenges they're facing, and what support they need, right? Our monthly sessions that we do to create team building and give spaces is we encourage one-on-one conversations, and even socializing outside the studio. All of these things keeps, it's those invisible bonds. You have to make those invisible bonds and see those. If you don't see those, then you have to just kind of pay attention, because you can feel that energy, when a team is vibing and they're rowing in the same direction, even if they disagree on things or they don't see everything eye to eye. You just know that they're pulling their weight, and whatever their weight is, they're pulling it in that same direction. And the minute you walk into a space where that's not happening, you can feel that immediately. I am hypersensitive to that. Like, I could pick up on dysfunction in a team, like before anyone even says anything.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's exactly what I mean. That's exactly that intangible that is so tangible,
Yeah.
right? You would never put dysfunction on a scorecard, and there's no test for it, right?
Yeah.
But it's simply there or not there, or you need to be looking for it. Or, if you're evaluating a company to join or invest in or whatever, you need to be looking for that. If you're looking, if you're a leader creating a company, I think a lot of people sometimes are lucky as leaders to have that happen, in spite of them. But I do think that the leaders of tomorrow are going to have to care about that more than ever. I just think it has to come from the top down, that's important. You have to make it a priority. Like you said, you factor it into decisions that may be black and white in a financial perspective, but there's human elements and there's domino, effect to decisions. And, you do your best to balance them,
Yeah, and this is, I know, for people probably listening to this, what we're talking about is really challenging status quo, right? We're saying something probably most organizations are listening to saying, what are they talking about, right? Because we're talking about something that's not measurable. And for a lot of people, that is the only way they can make big decisions, right? And we're saying there's a lot of things you need to consider that also go into that equation. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you this question, because there are going to be situations where there's an idea or an approach that isn't wrong by any kind of reasonable measure. And you were kind of starting to touch on this a little bit earlier, but I want you to go a little bit deeper on, but that still doesn't kind of seem quite right, right? So like, how do we handle those situations?
Yeah. Well, I that's what I was saying. I think the gut, this is one of those things, and, philosophically, in the world of AI we live in right now, we as humans are not going to be the best actor to evaluate data points. We have limited cognitive ability to process more than 10 or 20 data points at once, right? We are easily affected by bias. So if you're looking at a decision that is a data-driven decision, black and white, that is going to largely transfer to AI and systems, automated systems within my career. So you're talking the next, 10 years, 20 years, that'll happen. What is left for humans to do? Humans are left to go back to our gut instincts, and I think as more and more data becomes available, and I actually think we're going to be moving into a world of abundance more in the next couple decades as well. So you're going to have unlimited data, which means you're going to have unlimited possibilities or decisions or opportunities to build or invest or whatever. And you're going to be able to process those options more than ever. But you might be able to narrow 1,000 great ideas down to 100 or 10. What's going to be the decision point? It's going to be those gut choices, and it's going to be hard to measure those things. I mean, we do that in the studio. We've got a lot of ideas we're excited about. We've experimented with so many different versions of a scorecard. We could do 10 sessions on that alone. But, scorecard is a way of narrowing down the obvious, right? And that's okay to whittle out the obvious. But still, when you get down to your, core ideas, I've looked at 10 ideas once at one point and liked them all on the surface, like them all, but then you ultimately have to say, what is my gut on this, right? And sometimes it's a feel from your past. Maybe it's just some kind of intangible that you're sensing in the market. And every time we do that, or I call it a gut choice, I'm always thinking out loud, because that's something that could have been factored back into a scorecard. Is there a quantitative, metric that would be a precursor to that gut choice? And sometimes there are, but it's like a good example would be, you could look at a transcript of talking to somebody and 10 people could say the exact same words, right? And might even similar pace and different things, but you as a human are able to decide who you trust or who you like. But the pace, the words, even certain intonations, all those things might be very similar. So it'd be difficult for a system to detect the difference, but you as a human would tell you who you liked, right? And so when you think about things like, even, I don't know, there's casting directors in Hollywood, right? Those are the kind of decisions they're making. They're making a decision on an actor and an actress and their gut instinct that there's going to be chemistry between those two, right? That's what the best casting directors do. You can't put that on a spreadsheet. There's probably 100 fantastic actors and actresses that were rejected for that part. Why were those two picked? And sometimes you can watch a movie, you can see that the casting director got it wrong, right? But again, I think that these gut instincts is more important than ever that we listen to them. We talk about flow. I also think there's another way I sense those things. There's an energetic. I actually think that the savior of society, in the way I see it today, is going to be, we are going to become less and less divisive, and we're going to become more and more energetic in the way we think and the way we move through life. But that's going to reverse a 40-year trend. But I do believe that's where, we're going the next couple decades.
Thank you. Yeah. I know we wanted to just quickly hit, we're almost getting to time, and I wanted to give a shout out to all the people that are joining us. I can't see some of the names, but Mehul, I see you. Daruka, great to see you too. Thank you for joining us. But Mark, I did want to just quickly, I know we had talked about making sure we covered due diligence, right? What are some of the things that people should be looking at that might be, like we're talking about, the intangible aspects that someone's doing due diligence? What are some things they should be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot what I said in the beginning. If you're in a position of looking at a company to invest in, or even join as an executive or something, again, assuming you can go through all the spreadsheet exercises and it's all green lights, I would be asking, if I was your colleague and you came back and said, yeah, I think it's a good investment, I'd still be saying, well, what's your gut? What's your feeling? Do you like the people? Like, how do you quantify, do I like them? Right? Do you trust them? Is this team the kind of team you could put on almost anything and they'd succeed? Like, what does that question ask you? That question asks you, how much are you feeling the vibe and the energy of this team to go do great things in any scenario, versus the circumstances they're currently in make them the right team. The reason why that doesn't work is in every startup, circumstances change. You're going to pivot. You're going to end up in a market you didn't think that you're going to end up in. You're going to end up in a financial situation you didn't expect. You're going to end up in a competitive situation you didn't expect. So you can't find yourself going, yeah, I mean, the right team for this current circumstance. If you're finding yourself saying that or justifying that in your mind, you've already told yourself it's the wrong team. Because you should be coming away going, man, that team could do anything. I love that leader. Those people are galvanized. They are unified against something. There's just magic in the air. They could do a yogurt stand or they could do an AI product. Like I want them, they're going to go do it. And that's like, those are the questions that help you understand what are you really feeling versus and throw away the spreadsheet, just as another data point, right? But let's say the spreadsheet's perfect. Then I think those are the questions that tell you, are you really ready to make a bet?
Love it. I love all of that. I think the quality of the team, the leadership team that you're talking about, the team itself, can they, no matter what the situation is or the circumstances, can they overcome that? Right. I think that's a great one. I love that. And the one I was thinking about when I was getting ready for this is, for me, it's like, I would say, look at the alignment of the core values, right? Does the company share your values? That's going to make it more likely to integrate smoothly, right? And contribute overall to your overall mission. I mean, that's literally a non-negotiable, right? I think as part of due diligence, you can't really quantify that, but you have to at least reflect on that alignment, right?
Right. Well, and I think it's like a good friend or a good relationship, you'll say, oh, that person can finish my sentence, or they know what I'm thinking just by the look on my face, right? I think that when you start with the core alignment, it tends to mean that you're also starting from similar whys, and then hopefully you're doing something or building something in support of that, right? And so as a company, you get to the same spot. You're finishing each other's sentences. You know what each other are thinking. You know when to bring something to each other or not. You know when someone's having a rough, couple days and you give them some space. Like it flows. And I just think it's more important than ever. It's not talked about a lot. And I'd like to see, investors be more bold, even though we're going more and more data driven, to start talking about the qualitative aspects of the decisions they make and the teams they invest in.
Love it. All right. One last question. I love this one because, of course, I care about the culture, and this is a culture-related question. But how do we create like a positive and fun work environment, right? When certain aspects, like we can't mandate people to do things, right? But we want them to have fun. So what are your thoughts on how we can go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about values. It's about priorities. On one hand, businesses, I guess, serious, right? I mean, I don't mean that flippantly, but there's dollars and cents involved. There are people that, there's people's livelihoods involved. There's customers involved. So obviously it's serious, but you decide what kind of tone you leave, what kind of tone you set in terms of the overall. Sorry, I'm getting a delivery.
We get it. We work from home. It's fine. You're in the office, though.
I know, and I'm dog sitting. So, I think, again, you decide what tone you set, and I think that, we as leaders, it's easy to rally to things that are tough or difficult and kind of set that tone, but then it's really kind of heavy, right? And I'm certainly trying to lighten myself up as well. I like what I do. I love what I do. And I think that we're trying to make sure everybody here feels similar, because that's, what we're doing is not easy by definition. We chose a difficult thing. And I always say the people who join this journey should show up because the challenges ahead excite the crap out of them. The things we have to solve for really should be something that is motivating for them. For me, that gets me out of bed. And so going and tackling these things to me is the fun, because I know that it's not something a lot of people are going to do. So we're going to be, somewhere in the 10, 20 years from now with a handful of other people who put the same kind of passion and curiosity after it and didn't see the challenges or the twists in the road as anything negative, just something to learn from and solve for. So I think that comes down from the top down in terms of how you set the tone on certain things. And also, as a leadership team, to keep each other accountable. Sometimes we can phrase something that feels heavy or, dramatic, and it can be a real downer. And, if I hear that from somebody too many times, I'll point it out, because ultimately I'm surrounded by people that I trust who they are in their heart and their core and why they're here. And sometimes we just need to be checked and kind of hit the reset button and realize what we're putting out, right? But ultimately, going back to the core chemistry, we at least are a group of people that I consider everybody that's in the studio good people, good-hearted people trying to do things for the right reasons. And we all have mutual respect for each other. And while there's differences and some personalities get along better than others, at the end of the day, everybody likes each other. And we can all get on a call and spend 5-10 minutes joking and, trading, water cooler talk. And so, again, I just think it's important. You do a great job with the events that you put on to make sure that we do stuff in the studio that has nothing to do with work, whether it be meditation or some other kind of personal sharing. And I think that's just critical. And so, especially the amount of time we all spend virtually, you can't just say, hey, meet me at the foosball table, or, let's go down and shoot pool. We have a lot more, we have to put a lot more effort to make sure we connect. And it really is one of the things I'm most proud of, because there's been 2 or 3 times in my career pre-pandemic where I've had distributed teams and investors have told me, we don't believe in that. We believe everything has to be in a headquarters so you can really build culture. And they actually said, you must have a very different view of leadership than we do. And no, they don't. I think culture is critical. I think, it's one of our biggest strengths. And most of this team has been built virtually. I'm fortunate that most people have a chance to meet me at some point, but almost everybody has not met each other in the studio. And we have people all over the world that work together every single day. And you can see the affection they have for each other. You can see the stories they trade. You can see how much they know about each other's lives and backstories. And it just comes out. It oozes out of all of our conversations. And I'm proud of that, because it's probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, culture that I've ever been a part of building. It was a priority from the beginning, as you know. And to think about doing this all from being born in the pandemic is something that I think will be, we'll write stories about, at the end of this journey.
Yes. And yes. I mean, seriously. Okay. You just heard it from Chief Nobody, right? Fun and positivity start at the top. It's so true. I mean, honestly, I'll tell you, we have done our virtual team building events, right? For a while now. I've been doing the meditations from almost when I since joined the organization. We took a break, but we restarted it. But our core team, this is it. I mean, this is it. They show up at these events, right? They participate in these events. And so they're the leaders. And I say this all the time, that building these strong connections during these events, it's not just something to take lightly. That's going to create that naturally sort of enjoyable workplace where we don't have that going to work. It's going to be like, I'm excited because I really respect and like spending time with people. Right. And so I love this episode. This was one of my favorites, Mark. Thank you so much for being the visionary that's guiding us down this path. I am super excited to be on this journey, as you know, and anyone that talks to me knows, because I'm like always raving about what we're doing. Right. And I have no doubt that if we get this, what you're talking about, team chemistry, right. If we get that, I mean, I don't think getting that 100 companies is going to be a problem at all, because we're already on our way there, right? So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you. Actually, I'm going to say this right now, is next week we're doing a special event. So we're going to be doing one on Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific. So be on the lookout for details about that special one with our Chief of Incubation, Barry O'Reilly. All right, everybody. See you on Monday. Bye, Mark.
Thanks, Sejal.